going to show you guys a couple tutorials which will introduce you to After Effects and start to talk about how you translate your collages into animations. I'll kind of walk through some of the controls of After Effects and some of the menus, just a little bit, just to kind of get you guys a sense. I would really recommend checking out tutorials on YouTube, and also Linda is a really good resource, but just having an idea of kind of what you want to achieve first is a good place to start. So I'm going to start with a couple of photographs that I have here, just of like reads. Go to the project pane, sorry. So if we drag this stuff into the project pane, then we can just take one of these and drag it down into our like main board, and it's going to give us the kind of dimensions of a composition now. This is our kind of zoom window, so we can make it fit, whatever. Okay, so now I've got something which is a composition, which if I press Command K, it'll bring up the kind of composition windows for that, so I can see what the pixels are, I can see or see what the aspect ratio is, and see what the kind of size of the thing is. You can set that alternatively if you do a new composition, a new project. I'm just going to not save this real quick. Click New Composition, and you can set all of that here. So if you want to set it for a widescreen ratio, or if you want to set it for like Instagram or whatever you want to set, you can set those things here. You can also set the length of your animation, and you can also set background color, resolution, all that kind of stuff. So just for the interest of time, I'm just going to start by just dragging these guys in here. So I'm starting with the still image here. Now you can see down here is the timeline, and as I move this back and forward, nothing's happening to this thing, right? Right now it's just one static image. And so what we're interested in doing with the animations, obviously, is bringing some life to these things and also starting to create some kind of control over what we see. So sorry, I just turned the visibility on and off there. So I'm going to bring in some other, I've got some just drawings here. These are just like sketches I've done of like flow. Okay, so these things are, let's just say we're looking at, the idea of movement. All right, so I'm going to scale. Oops, I'm selecting both these. We can do this. We can adjust the scale either by kind of clicking and holding it, or you can also adjust the scale of these things in the transform option down here. Now we can change that scale over time by clicking that little stopwatch. So as we move forward, nothing's happening, but if I move that to here, say, make another keyframe by clicking that little button and change the scale, say, to 100 from 200 or whatever, now we can see as we drag this across that in time, that thing is changing, okay? So we're changing the scale of it now. Maybe we also want to change the position. So again, to change it, you click the stopwatch to kind of activate the ability to change. And then as I come over here to this other keyframe, I will click to add a new one, and I'll just move it. Okay. So now what we have happening is over time, if I press spacebar, it'll play. And we can see that the thing is shrinking and it's moving. Okay. So suddenly now I can start to talk perhaps about a relationship of two things. So let's put this layer under that layer, and let's animate that one too. Okay, so turn this layer off perhaps, open this one up, and so I'm just going to change the position maybe now. So in that time, I'm going to shift that thing out of the way. Now because I created a keyframe earlier, when I moved it, because the play had changed, it created a new keyframe automatically. So you can do that manually over here by clicking that button, or you can just, once you've made one keyframe, if the playhead is in a new position, it will automatically create one. So now if we look at this, we can just see that it's moving from in the screen to out of the screen. So let's turn that other layer back on, and we can see now this one is kind of moving up and out. That one's moving left to right. Now, there's no real relationship between these things yet. So maybe we want to make a relationship between these things. So perhaps what we could do would be to change the opacity. So again, click the stopwatch and go like this. And maybe we're just going to jump from like 100. Actually, let's just say like really quickly down to like 50. So let's just see. You can see how automatically that thing starts fading and the other thing starts coming up behind it, okay? And these things start now having a dialogue with each other. So let's bring in another one of these drawings. Just drag it in, drag it on top, bish, bash, bosh. And we can see that one on top. Okay, so let's scale it again. Oops, I'm on something else too. And now let's move that maybe top to bottom. So let's start it down here. And we're going to make a, change the, let's maybe mess with the rotation too, just to show you guys that. Position and scale. So over this time, we're going to move it up. So you can either, the other way, so we can click it and we can drag it wherever we want it. I'm holding shift, which will lock it in a straight line. If I let go of shift, I can move it anywhere. But if you hold shift, it'll snap to an axis. Okay, so let's just bring it up like that. And let's just change the scale like a touch. So let's just say like we're going to bring it up to 175 or something. I mean, whatever. It doesn't really matter for these purposes. I want you guys to experiment within this process. So just kind of play around. I mean, treat the animation process like the collage process. Okay, so we're going to mess with rotation too. So let's just say like 90 degrees. So we can type in the value here. You can see as I spin this, it's going to do whatever. You can also, if we put that to 0 again, so now there's been no rotation, that's the amount of times it's going to rotate. So let's say like 5 times, oops, 4 times, whatever. So now it's going to spin tons of times as it comes up. It's going to be, it's going to look stupid. But perhaps a subtle rotation will look nice. I don't know. Let's have a look and see. So we can see now suddenly we can see this relationship of these two moving elements in relationship to each other start to speak some kind of language of movement, right? Maybe that back one is dropped down a little bit too low in terms of opacity. So let's jump back here. Let's bump that up to 70. So it's a little bit more, it's a little bit lighter, and then we'll eventually bring it down to 50 by here. And then let's change the blend mode of this one so that these two, this layer and the layer below, are actually kind of talking to each other more. So if we do like an overlay, let's see what that looks like. Now, now these things are, beginning to hint at some kind of fluid motion because of their relationship or their proximity to one another, okay? We could also maybe bring in an animation of something that's actually some moving water. So this is just a video I shot on the beach of some seaweed kind of breathing. So let's pop that into. So now, suddenly, there's that video. Now, let's bring that one in. Rather than bring that in right at the start, let's say we move this thing up, and then maybe right when that thing jumps to the 90-degree turn, we'll bring it in. So if I'm moving this playhead back and forth right now, if I hold shift, it will snap to those keyframes. So if you want to get something to lock to the keyframes, if you're moving this thing around, just press shift and it'll snap to it. I know I'm giving you guys a lot of information right now, so you can jump back and forward on this video and kind of see. But just playing around, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to show you guys the interfaces if you haven't seen them before, so that you can kind of get a sense of what we're looking at and what we're talking about. So now suddenly, if we jump back to here, we can see in this kind of clip panel where that thing comes in. If I compress these things, we can now see, okay, these all start over here. This one isn't going to start till later. If I want to like split this, say, I can do Command Shift D, and that'll create like a split in that line. And now I can move these two separate clips around. I'm just going to undo that step because I don't actually want to do that. But just to say that you can split these things, I think that's the shortcut, but yeah, split layer. So it's edit split layer if you want to do that, or you can duplicate the layer, blah, 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 whatever. There's a ton of stuff that you can do, and I encourage you guys just to mess around. Use these first animation tests just as an opportunity to kind of like play with this. See what the software can do. Okay, so start at the beginning. We have these two little things talking to each other, moving around, and then suddenly we're going to get that animation, which is going to pop in a minute. And already we have something which is like, it's kind of starting to do something. It has a tonal, there's a tonal palette at play here. There's these kind of senses of movement and motion. There's different things that are kind of happening, which are perhaps nice. So now let's just say we want to distort one of these things just to kind of like say, okay, we have movement within the screen space, but we don't really yet have a sense of depth. Right, we do have some changes in scale, but let's see. This might help to do some to reveal some depth. This is the sound, so you can turn the sound on and off. I don't want sound, so I'm just going to turn it off. So let's transform the scale. So we're gonna have this thing like slowly grow at us. So over the course of say 4 seconds, this thing is actually going to grow to fill the screen. Okay, and let's just see if that does anything in terms of scale. Sorry, my computer's trying to do a lot right now, so it's not moving super quick. You can see this green bar down here. What that green bar is doing is it's pre-rendering. So there's like basically a catch which will fill up on your computer as the program does these kind of pre-renders. So now if I jump back to the playhead here, you can see it's going to run way smoother. So I'm just pressing spacebar to play. And you can see that's much smoother. So wherever the green is, that is where your computer has pre-rendered the clip, and so it'll run smoother the second time around. So you can see maybe that's starting to do something with depth. Now let's say that I want to draw focus to something. Okay, so maybe I want to bring in like a new shape layer. So let's do layer, new shape. Okay, so we can see when I've done that shape layer, it's come up on top of my stack, and we can see that it automatically fills the whole thing. Now I'm gonna make like a circle, let's say, so a vector circle just over here, just to be like, hey, I want you to look at whatever. If I hold shift, it'll make a perfect circle, and then I can just move that thing around. Now up here we can see we have fill and stroke, so just like an Illustrator, you can adjust whatever that's gonna be. Let's make it white. Let's make it maybe a little bit thicker. And we can say, I'm just going to bring that in like right about here, right when it gets to that scale. So now I can either drag this to that. Again, if I press shift, it'll snap to my playhead. Or alternatively, what I could do is I could do Apple Shift D to split that layer and then just delete that one out. So whatever, there's a lot of ways, as with Photoshop, there's a lot of ways in which you can kind of manipulate this stuff. So now when this thing gets to size, suddenly it's like this vector appears to draw our attention to this thing. In the next tutorial, I'm going to show you guys how to do masks and stuff. So we could create that as a mask if we wanted, which would just isolate that specific area of the video. And you can control those as vectors over time as well. Again, I'll show that to you in the next video. So the next video is going to deal more with animation stuff, with filming some paper models. So as there's kind of twofold exercise happening at this next stage. What we want you guys to be doing is to simultaneously be translating your collages into moving images, to begin to play with layers and to begin to play with the idea of designing for a screen and to bring some motion into your work. And then also we want you to be taking your Miro boards, which you guys have been talking about, isolation and connection and, whatever kind of lockdown COVID stuff you guys are generating, and translating those into kind of polished drawings. So first you made these Miro boards, which were documents of your conversations with your teammates. Then you're going to take those Miro boards and you're going to turn them into kind of traditional architectural drawings. And those drawings will be like topographies, basically, of conversations. So you'll be generating landscapes out of these conversations. And then you can start to extrude those things and turn them into paper models, for example, which I'm going to look at in the next tutorial to show you guys kind of how to do that. So again, this whole process is just play. We want you guys to experiment and figure things out. There's just so much you can do with all of this, and the more comfortable